Welcome to Decentralized News, our weekly coverage of the major headlines in Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space. I am your host, Piter, joined as always by my Canadian brethren, Ozzy. How you doing today, Ozzy?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Awesome. Thank you very much. We got some huge news this week, so let's jump right in. Please do your own research. This is not financial advice. The big story, obviously, this week was the summary judgment that came down in the XRP case. We'll get into it quickly. I want to give a comment from Gary Gensler. He came out. This is Monday. We're recording this. He's at the National Press Club and got asked specifically on this. And we did get a comment from him. So I'm going to play it real quick. Okay.
Sounds good.
Just a handful of days ago, we were pleased from that decision, recognizing the importance of protecting investors on the institutional investors in that. And that the court movement with regard to fair notice. And while disappointed on what they said about retail investors, we're still looking at it and assessing that opinion.
How does the federal court ruling?
Okay, so there you go. Sorry about that. Okay, basically there was a decision and they agreed with the SEC on some stuff and they agreed with Ripple on others. It was broadly seen as a win for XRP and a setback for the SEC. However, and while the market did pump initially, it's come right back down to earth. I'll give you a couple quotes from the judgment. So the SEC's motion for summary judgment is granted for institutional sales. So institutional sales constituted the unregistered offer of sale of investment contract in violation of Section 5 of the Securities Act. So those were ruled in favor of the SEC. However, programmatic sales, quote unquote, other distributions, and Larson's and Garlinghouse sales, so the founders, the sales they did, and this is a quote, having considered the economic reality and totality of the circumstances, the court concluded that programmatic sales of XRP did not constitute the offer and sale of investment contracts. So this was the part that was seen as a win for the SEC. But a little bit of back and forth there. It's not 100% clear.
Yeah, the big case is really about these institutional sales because if you're any of the major altcoins, there has been institutional sales, and that is a major risk factor. It does still leave tokens like Matic at significant risk because if they just decide that institutional fundraisers are securities, then that still leaves many tokens wide open. Although this could be a major win for DeFi that doesn't necessarily do those big VC raises and just raises directly from users. And these programmatic sales are quite interesting that they aren't at the time being considered security transactions because there's no contract or investment contract that's being drafted between the two parties. And I think that's really major. And
yeah, I guess there
speaks to the need for something other than a Howey test to describe
good
crypto.
point. Yeah, so they're saying that the programmatic sales are not because if I go in there and make a purchase, I'm not sure who I'm buying it from. I'm buying it from the exchange. I'm not necessarily buying it from Ripple. So therefore, maybe it's not a security. But it's a little confusing because if you bought it on the institutional side or like in a pre-sale, it is a security. So it is and it isn't at the same time. When I read this, as much as there was a lot of excitement, it was like, is there really a ton of clarity here? And is this the end of it? And that's why I put up the Gary Gensler quote, because it's okay, what are they saying about it? Because one of the big questions is, are they going to appeal it?
I definitely feel like there's a chance that we see an appeal or that they seek a clarification on whether there's a way to make these programmatic sales a security transaction. It would be almost essential in Coinbase's case for the SEC to make that argument. If the SEC can't make the argument that programmatic sales are the sales of securities, 99% of the case against Coinbase disappears. It could be a very interesting point to see what happens.
Yeah, like what they're going to do. Are they going to appeal? I've heard two arguments. One, they won't appeal because it's too risky. It'll set too much precedent if they lose. But two, there was this guy, John Reed Stark. He came out. He was an attorney for over 18 years in the SEC's enforcement division. He said the decision resides on really shaky ground and is likely for appeal and will likely result in a reversal. His bottom line is like a stock or security or like this XRP is always a stock. It can't transmogrify into not stock. So his take is that the SEC will appeal the Ripple decision in the second court, and the second court will overturn it related to programmatic and other sales. So you can't have it both ways, but there's risk to it because if they don't rule in their favor on the SEC side, it just adds a lot more precedent for and protection for these programmatic sales.
Yeah, I'd love to see if Stark maybe worked on the early days of this case. I've heard other arguments of why they may not appeal is that this is the former chairman's case. It's not Gary Gensler's SEC's case. Gary Gensler's shown less appetite for the Ripple case overall since he's taken over chairship, and I'd be wondering if they stop pursuing the case because they feel like there's maybe stronger arguments to be made by looking at regulating exchanges for the sales and how they're conducting transactions on exchanges rather than necessarily going after each individual token one by one.
Yeah, I look at the market these are complicated issues. It's just, okay, so what does this mean? Well, what is the market telling me? At first, it was very excited, but it really seemed to calm down. And the market seems unsure about which way this is going to go from here in terms of all these coins being labeled securities or not.
Yeah, I think the market also just realized that it pumped up really fast. XRP did 80% in a day, which in some ways is justified just because
there was a lot of pressure built up. Just, once we get a decision, and then it popped a little bit, but it settled back down. To me, it wasn't.
It was an 80% pump. That's still a great pump. It's not all-time high or anything like that, but it's still a strong pump. And of all cases, like this happened during a bear market, 80% in a day. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, but if you've been in this a long time, you've been waiting 3 years for a decision, and you might be sitting
get 80%. That still beats what you get in the stock market, man.
Yeah, but that's if you bought it after it came down and things like that. I don't know that everyone who's been holding out this long would necessarily are winning with an 80% pop. If you bought it while it's been down this bear market, sure, it's a good win, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's always gonna be. Sometimes this win is more of a should have been considered more as a long-term win than necessarily a short-term win. It's hard to say, oh yeah, this was a huge short-term win for crypto. We're still under significant economic and other pressures that make it so that crypto isn't in a bull market yet. Like, I think that's just unreasonable to even consider right now. And so I think people just need to realize we're not going to get 200% in a day or sustained 200, 300% movements. We're not in a bull market where there's ridiculous amounts of cash just floating around waiting to buy whatever altcoin BitBoy or some other crypto influencer shills that day.
No, that is a fair point. Yeah, and in a broader perspective, I guess the two things I'm looking for are, one, what is the SEC's next move? Like, what is their next enforcement action, if any? Like, how do they proceed from here? There's rhetoric and there's reality. What do they actually do next? That'll be really interesting to watch, their next move. Two, is there more of an appetite in the U.S. legislature to take on crypto now that the SEC kind of has this setback a little bit? Like, they're having trouble regulating it and they need help from the legislature. So that would be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think that is incredibly important. I think what the appetite is from the legislature and whether we're gonna see something maybe further with this case or with the Coinbase case, which we're gonna talk about next. I think
Yeah, we can go right into that.
what's gonna happen is bigger. Do we go after NFTs? Do we start pursuing all major cryptos for their institutional sales? Do we start regulating stable coins? What do we do next? Do we continue our targeting of exchanges? Where do we go?
Yeah. Speaking of the Coinbase case, so on Thursday, that trial basically started. So let's see. The SEC charged Coinbase with operating its crypto assets trading platform as an unregistered national securities exchange broker and clearing agency, and also charged Coinbase for failing to register the offer and sale of its crypto asset staking as a service program. So on Thursday, they began their defense in court. The hearing was largely administrative, but the arguments cut the teeth of whether the country's top financial regulator has the authority to bring enforcement against digital assets industry. During the initial hearing, the judge took center stage asking both parties questions. A little side note, interestingly, when they were talking to they reiterated that Bitcoin is a commodity and didn't comment on Ethereum. Just want to throw that out there on whether it's a commodity or a security, just to mention that. But a key point of disagreement during this exchange was around the SEC's previous approval of Coinbase's S1. So when they did their initial IPO, the Coinbase legal team pointed out that several of the crypto assets named in the SEC's lawsuit were already trading on the platform when the SEC gave its nod to Coinbase. And they also sparred over the nature of Coinbase's staking program. Coinbase's lawyers argued that the staking services do not constitute an investment contract, likening it to a paid service with no risk of loss to the staking party. The SEC, on the other hand, countered that even IT services can have entrepreneurial aspect, thereby classifying staking as an investment activity. One other quick little note, Coinbase Chief Legal Officer Paul Grewal was on CNBC, told that crypto exchange legal standing has been improved by the court order in the Ripple case. So connected to the Ripple case. I thought we would win before this decision. He's obviously always very confident. But he said, I thought we would win before the decision, but we think this decision has only further strengthened our case. So they're emboldened by all this.
Yeah, I think the case does strengthen Coinbase's case. Like Ripple's case, how it's closed so far, has strengthened Coinbase's case. There's not even a question about it. It at least removes the unregistered national securities exchange, because if Ripple isn't a security, then there's almost no cryptocurrency that could be considered a security at this point. Ripple is one of the most centralized cryptocurrencies there is. And that knocks out 90% of their case. Whether their staking as a service program is considered an unregistered security, he might have a case there. Just based off precedent of other exchanges folding their staking as a service offering under SEC pressure. That's maybe questionable.
I know Kraken had to stop theirs, or they voluntarily stopped it, or they were forced to. I can't remember exactly which, but yeah. And I know Coinbase, I think in 4 states, they temporarily suspended it while this was going on just recently. So yeah, it certainly seems under fire, their staking programs, for sure.
Yeah, so I think the staking program is maybe the one piece of the case where the SEC still has some ground. But I do agree with Paul Grewal, and he's put out some amazing threads on Twitter about the case, about all the actions that Coinbase has taken. And I think that this is a very interesting battle that'll essentially see if all crypto goes to the big banks or if exchanges can maybe continue to exist in the US at all.
We'll see how long this court battle goes on for. There were some comments about the judge saying, don't ruin your summer vacations getting all this stuff together. Don't rush. And so, come on, no, we want a decision. Let's go. Get this show on the road.
Yeah. We all
that kind of joking, I was like, oh, come on, no, we want to know. There was also a little bit of intrigue on Twitter, something about ARK Invest, and I think Brian Armstrong like selling Coinbase stock on some of this news. I'm not sure if it came out after the XRP. Maybe they're selling some of that pump, but they were offloading some stock. So
they need to
little
cash flow. They ARK had a whole bunch from, I think, pre-IPO, and I'm guarantee you that Brian Armstrong did. And
yeah, I mean, they still own some, but yeah, there was some selling. There was a little bit of FUD, even though generally speaking, positive news coming out of this initial court hearing and the XRP case and everything.
yeah, that's gonna happen. People are gonna FUD anything when anything good happens.
Yeah. Well, there's just always two sides of the coin, important to bring up. But it's just a little side note that I noticed. Another kind of positive news, we have all these ETFs that are being applied for. One of the things that kind of officially starts the clock from the SEC's point of view is when they acknowledge receiving the applications. So the SEC acknowledged receiving from Fidelity, Van Eck, Wisdom Tree, Invesco on July 14th. And then furthermore, they had similar acknowledgments were reported recently for Blackrock. And then companies like ARK and Bitwise had already received acknowledgments from the regulator before that. The acknowledgement itself does not indicate the regulator's approval or denial of the pending application, but it does represent a significant milestone in the application process. So they've all been updated. We talked about last week with the new security agreements. And the estimates are as early as fall, early winter to spring next year, the beginning of next year. So late this year, early next year, we might start seeing some information coming out. They can always get pushed back. And it looks like ARK Invest may be the first to get some news on. There's the first pending one.
Yeah, but I feel like they're probably the least likely of all the cases to all the different ETFs to get approved. ARK doesn't have as long a track record and probably.
But they did update it to make it similar to BlackRock's. Like they updated the same things that everyone else did to bring it in line with BlackRock's application. So it'll be interesting to see, only because they'll be the first one to maybe get a little bit of an update as to what may happen going forward. If theirs gets approved, it's hard to imagine BlackRock's not. That's for
yeah, that's 100% true. We'll see. I feel like they'll find some reason why ARK can't be improved. I still think that we're talking about a October, November, December approval. So right in the middle of that window for when we start seeing a Bitcoin spot ETF being approved, whether it's BlackRock's or someone else's. I've got a feeling it's BlackRock's, but we'll see from there. It's interesting because we do have quite a wide range of dates. We're talking as early as January 2024 and as late as March 2024 for the existing applications, with other deadlines as soon as September, but kind of all ranging in those middle months. So it should be cool. It's follows a history of like many rejections of Bitcoin ETFs. Grayscale has started as early as October.
Yeah, wow. It's weird to see that kind of number in crypto.
Yeah.
2016.
Bitcoin had only really been around in a major way for a few years at that point. And then we really started seeing ETF applications from Invesco and Galaxy, Van Eck, Wisdom Tree, Grayscale again, ARK Invest.
I don't see Fidelity on here, but they have one in too.
Yeah, we see more of that start coming in 2021. In the last bull run, everyone was rumoring, oh my goodness, is there going to be an ETF approval? And that's going to send off the super cycle. That never really happened. And then we've seen this latest round in 2023 of all of these kind of attempts coming together and being rejected, but just urged to refile. So it's pretty interesting. This is coming, on the Brits of Europe just getting their first Bitcoin ETF. You got more news on that, Peter?
It's just an article that came out this week. Europe's first Bitcoin exchange traded fund is expected to be publicly listed this month. It's a Jacobi Asset Management. They originally announced this way back in July of 2022, but then the whole thing fell apart and there's no appetite for it. So it now says the fund is on track to launch this month, having decided that last year the time wasn't right following the Terra Luna cryptocurrency crash in May 2022 and the FTX collapse, but that demand has shifted since last summer. But yeah, we'll see. It's supposed to come out this month, so we'll see when it actually does, and also what kind of appetite the market has for it. Australia, Brazil, Canada, they all have spot Bitcoin ETFs. It's an argument that maybe a Bitcoin ETF won't be as big of a deal as you think. I tend to agree with you that it is, especially a company like Blackrock getting involved, and just seeing these comments from Larry Fink recently, who before wasn't too positive on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but his tone has really changed. And part of it seems to be that the people whose assets they're managing are more interested in it, so there's just more demand for it. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Exciting to see that there will be this canary in the coal mine, Europe going first. Certainly bigger market than Australia or Brazil or Canada, no offense, sir. So we'll see if there's an appetite for it and what happens over there.
Yeah, I don't think that the ETFs launching will immediately pump Bitcoin like a lot of other people are talking about. I think it will provide the accessibility that'll be needed, that once the next bull market and like the economy starts turning around, that it'll provide that extra liquidity that can potentially push this market cycle a bit higher than some analysts were originally expecting. I don't necessarily think it's a fuel to pull us out of this bear market, and anyone that says that is selling you hopium. I don't think that's an accurate representation, but
it's not going to start the fire, but it's more logs for the fire once it gets going. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. And to give an idea of when we think that fire might get going, let's take a quick glance at the U.S. economic calendar. This week, we're looking pretty quiet. There's no real major decisions coming this week. We might see some numbers around retail sales and inventory. We're also going to see some housing numbers about buildings and a bit about jobless claims and housing sales, but nothing necessarily like outstanding or majorly influential. What's really going to start making a big decision and a big impact is next Wednesday, July 26th, FOMC decision. We're going to have a huge press conference from Jay Powell with right now an almost unanimous forecast of 97% of people expecting a rate hike at this next meeting.
Yeah, it seems like the only thing that will move the markets on that day will be quotes from him, not necessarily the fact. Like, it's fairly well expected. If they didn't raise rates, that would move the markets, of course. But with 99%, 95% expecting a rate hike, maybe his comments can move the market, though.
I mean, I think his comments can move the market if in kind of two different ways. Whether he gets more bearish and continues to suggest more rate hikes. Larry Fink said 2 to 4. This would only be one of said 4. Or if he gets particularly bullish and saying that we're done with rate hikes or done, then...
Or like some insight into what everyone was saying. Oh, yeah. Sometimes there's little bits of that. Yeah.
Exactly. So if we get some of those insights, then that's going to definitely be a very interesting kind of meeting. I don't necessarily think we'll see some of the volatility that we've seen in past meetings, especially if we look back to January, February, and March.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine with the consensus so strong for a rate hike. If there's a rate hike, it doesn't seem like it'll move the market that much. But the market always surprises me, though.
Yeah, looking down the forecast timeline right now towards the end of the year, the market's woken up. There's 80% of forecasts are now expecting no rate cuts up until this point. There's 20% that are right now forecasting that the rates will be the same now through December, but there's 56% that are expecting just this one more rate hike, with another 23 to 25% expecting one or two more rate hikes before the end of the year, with general consensus saying that's more likely to be in November than September. So pretty interesting forecasts.
Yeah, not like a big change coming in when you're talking about what's going to start the fire. It doesn't look like it's going to be the Fed anytime soon.
No, we're seeing some leanings from forecasters that we could start seeing rate cuts as early as January next year, but more likely looking at March of next year for rate cuts based on current forecasts. But
Yeah.
that's our latest indicator on when we might see a turnaround in the market. Do we see it in March? Maybe. That's still 6+ months away, and a lot can happen between now and then. And so maybe we do see the first rate cut in March of 2024.
That would be exciting timing. We could have a Bitcoin spot ETF. We have a halving coming up around that time. That would be pretty.
That would be a pretty big fuel to the fire of.
Yeah, that's hopeful. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Another
I think
crypto that's been having a little bit of a bull market fire other than XRP is Matic. Have you seen the news around Matic?
yeah, they had a big story this week. They were talking about they had a new white paper come out, which is always exciting. It was interesting to see one from Polygon. Did you take a look at it?
I used ChatGPT to summarize it. Did you?
Okay, yeah. I looked at it, but yeah, I didn't hear the ChatGPT one. But essentially, they want to put out a new coin, update Matic to Pol, help with scalability, all that. But yeah, what did ChatGPT say about it?
GPT essentially was talking about how they're trying to unify all of the different layers and systems and protocols that they're building, including their proof of stake protocol, there's zero knowledge proof EVM, and there's supernets, which have recently been adopted by an Indian state. And essentially that it's a long-term transition. It's not a tomorrow your Matic is it's a 4-year window and it's being traded one for one. So they're not shrinking or boosting supply, which is always interesting and important. But it's also still subject to approval from the Polygon community. So this is seeing the DAO at work. I assume we're going to see approval, though.
Yeah, looking at the initial reaction, it does seem this will happen. But yeah, it's not approved yet. There's going to be a 4-year timeline to transition over. And it does just seem to be an update of the tokenomics and of the coin for scalability. And yeah, all the things they're building. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. I'm intrigued to see if when it passes, what the reaction is and how quickly people maybe move over to the Pol token. That would be, I think, something that's important to see. Do we see everybody just shifting right away to Pol, and whether we can keep the Matic price action charts for traders, or do we get a whole new chart?
If we do get another bull market, it seems like they may have some exciting news to go into it with. I don't know. Smart team over there at Polygon.
Yeah, they keep having these big announcements. They were quiet for a couple months, but they've really come back swinging with these new announcements.
Yeah, they took a hit with the getting mentioned in all these SEC filings.
That's for sure. We'll see what happens, and hopefully we keep seeing something positive.
Yeah. Oh, we also had some news in terms of adoption and positive news from Google. Google Play is going to allow users to earn crypto assets in apps and games. They will now permit apps and games to allow users to buy, sell, and earn digital assets like NFTs, so tokens and NFTs. From reimagining traditional games with user-owned content to boosting user loyalty through unique NFT rewards, we're excited to see creative in-app experiences flourish and help developers expand their businesses. This is from Joseph Mills, the product manager for Google Play. And this is unlike Apple, who has not done this yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's good for Google, and it's good for Web3 in terms of, oh, hey, we're Web3 apps and Web3 games now have even more incentive to be actually good games, because they can actually get themselves onto iOS, not onto iOS, but onto Android devices. And I think that's key for getting more game developers to be building in Web3.
Yeah, maybe we can get that killer game app. It just takes one. And then if you get that killer app, that'll put a lot of pressure on Apple to join the crowd.
Yeah, I think it would put a lot of pressure on Apple, especially now that Google Play is saying yes. We'll see. But
Yeah, we'll see how this plays out.
let's finish with the story from my good old Canada. Canada has come down somewhat strong on exchanges, not nearly as strong as the SEC, but definitely not softly. They've basically banned stablecoins in many ways, at least using stablecoins as the main form of transaction on exchanges and requiring them to use the Canadian dollar instead. This has, amongst other things, other rules, including rules around leverage, pushed exchanges such as Bittrex and Binance out of Canada. Binance announcing their departure just a couple months ago. But we're now seeing a new player enter the space with WonderFi, CoinSquare, and CoinMart, which are all regulated Canadian cryptocurrency exchanges merging to be, quote unquote, the largest regulated crypto exchange trading asset platform. What's really interesting is that these crypto exchanges are also backed by Kevin O'Leary, the infamous backer of FTX and
I'm
defender
no
of
fan of
SBF.
So I guess he's Canadian. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he's Canadian. He was on the Canadian version, the original version of Shark Tank, which was,
You get to claim him.
yeah. So he's a big backer in this deal, and we're gonna see this merger. But we've also already started to see some brokers within Canada, such as Wealthsimple, offer access to cryptocurrencies and be legally regulated in that. It just depends on maybe liquidity and cheaper prices who will really become dominant player in Canada right now.
Did you remember that story with the Canadian Post Office where you can go buy Bitcoin or something like that?
Yeah,
that a
I
little
tried
bit.
at my
Did you ever-
post office and it didn't work, but I'm in a really tiny town.
That's nice.
So that was not necessarily the easiest thing to do. I tried
Who
a bigger
are you?
post office.
Who are you and why are you here? Get out of here. There's the door. Get out of here.
Yeah, there was a 50-50 shot that the postmaster was also francophone, and so was not necessarily understanding everything that I was saying in English.
I see.
And I don't necessarily know all my crypto terms in French, so that might
Interesting.
have partially been on me.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, good luck. The rising regulatory compliance and customer acquisition costs is encouraging cryptocurrencies to join forces. That was in this article about the whole WonderFi and these guys coming together. But it makes me wonder: are these things going to lead to more centralized exchanges or more decentralized exchanges? I'd like to see more of the decentralized exchange, but centralized exchanges have their place. So we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the next little while. I'm intrigued. I'm hoping we keep at least some decentralized access outside of our big banks to crypto.
Yeah, but having any on-ramp and off-ramps, I think, are positive. If these guys can get it together and have a regulated, centralized exchange that works, then you can get money on and off. Seems like a positive to me, all in all told.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, thanks for listening to Decentralized News. We post first to YouTube, so please consider subscribing to catch the videos as soon as they drop. Our goal is to provide unfiltered content to help foster genuine discussions, help this entire space grow. Please remember, this is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors. This show is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research before making any investment decision. Thanks for your support and stay tuned for the next episode.